They say living well is the best revenge. But Sarah didn't want revenge. She just wanted to survive the night. When she walked into her 10-year high school reunion, she knew her ex-husband Brad would be there. She knew he would try to destroy her. She knew he would mock her simple dress and her quiet life. But what Brad didn't know was who was parking the car outside. He didn't know that the man about to walk through those doors wasn't just a husband. He was the man who signed Brad's paychecks. Stick around, because the humiliation you're about to see is going to flip in a way you will never see coming. The invitation had been sitting on Sarah's kitchen counter for 3 months, gathering dust next to a stack of architectural digests and unfinished sketches. It was heavy cardstock, cream-colored with gold-embossed lettering, St. Jude's preparatory class of 2014's 10-year reunion, the Plaza Hotel, New York City. Most people look at a reunion invitation and feel a mix of nostalgia and curiosity. Sarah Miller looked at it and felt a cold knot of dread tighten in her stomach. For the last 3 years, Sarah had curated a life of intentional obscurity. She lived in a renovated farmhouse in upstate New York, far away from the Hampton social circuit and the cutthroat Manhattan corporate ladders where her ex-husband, Brad Miller, climbed like a monkey on caffeine. To the outside world, and specifically to the alumni of St. Jude's, Sarah was the divorcee who crashed and burned. The narrative Brad had spun was a masterpiece of gaslighting. According to the rumor mill, Sarah had been mentally unstable, unable to support his ambitions, and ultimately, she was the one who left him, because she couldn't handle the pressure of his rising success as a hedge fund manager at BlackRock. The truth, of course, was far uglier. Brad had drained their joint savings to fund a gambling habit he called high-risk investment strategies, cheated on her with his personal assistant, Tiffany, and then, when Sarah threatened to expose his embezzlement of family funds, he used his high-powered lawyers to bully her into a settlement that left her with nothing but her maiden name and a bruised ego. "You really don't have to go, you know," a deep voice rumbled from the doorway of her bedroom. Sarah looked up from her vanity. Standing there, leaning against the doorframe in a pair of dark denim jeans and a grey cashmere sweater, was Liam. Liam wasn't just a husband, he was a fortress. At 6'3", with salt and pepper hair and eyes that looked like shattered slate, he carried an air of quiet, terrifying competence. He was the kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice to silence a room. "I have to," Sarah said, fastening a simple pearl earring. "If I don't show up, Brad wins. He gets to keep telling his story. He gets to be the hero who survived the crazy ex-wife. I just need to go, stand in the back, drink 1 glass of overpriced Chardonnay, and prove that I'm still standing." Liam walked over and placed his hands on her shoulders, looking at their reflection in the mirror. "You're doing more than standing, Sarah. You're soaring. You just don't like to show off." "It's not about showing off," she sighed, leaning back into him. "It's about dignity. Besides, nobody knows about us. Nobody knows about the business. To them, I'm just Sarah, the failed artist. Let them think that." Liam smiled, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Underestimation is a powerful weapon. But are you sure you want to take the rental?" Sarah nodded. "Yes. I don't want to pull up in the Aston Martin. It looks like I'm trying too hard. I rented a Ford Fusion. It's respectable. It's normal. It's safe." Liam kissed the top of her head. "All right. I have that board meeting with the investors from Tokyo until 8. But I'll drive down and meet you there for the last hour. I'll text you when I'm close." "You don't have to come in," she said quickly. "I don't want to cause a scene." "I'm coming in," Liam said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "I want to meet this Brad. I want to shake the hand of the man who was stupid enough to let you go." The drive into the city was a blur of brake lights and anxiety. Sarah parked the rental car 3 blocks away from the plaza to avoid the valet judgment. As she walked toward the iconic hotel, the October wind whipping through her trench coat, she felt like an imposter in her own life. She wore a black dress. It was vintage Dior, sourced from an estate sale in Paris. But to the untrained eye, it was just a simple, unbranded black dress. No logos, no flash. She carried a clutch that she had designed herself, part of her latest collection that had just been quietly picked up by Bergdorf Goodman under a pseudonym. As she entered the grand ballroom, the sensory overload hit her. The smell of expensive perfume, Baccarat Rouge 540, seemed to be the scent of the night, mixed with the aroma of truffle oil and champagne. A jazz band played a smooth cover of a top 40 hit from 2014. Sarah scanned the room. It was a sea of success, or at least the performance of success. She saw Jessica Thorne, the old-class president, showing off a diamond ring that looked heavy enough to cause carpal tunnel. She saw Michael Ross, the debate team captain, now a senator's aide, laughing a little too loudly at a joke that probably wasn't funny. And then she saw him. Brad was holding court near the open bar. He hadn't changed much, perhaps a little heavier around the midsection, but he hid it well under a bespoke navy suit that screamed, "Finance, bro!" He was gesturing wildly with a Scotch glass, a Patek Philippe watch glinting under the chandelier lights. Hanging onto his arm was Tiffany, the woman he had left Sarah for. Tiffany looked stunning in a red sequined gown that was perhaps a bit too loud for the occasion, but she wore it with the confidence of someone who had won. Sarah took a deep breath. Just 1 hour, she told herself. Survive the hour. She moved toward a quiet corner, hoping to blend into the drapes, but she had forgotten the one rule of high school hierarchies. The predator always smells the prey. Sarah had managed to nurse a sparkling water for 20 minutes, exchanging polite, hollow pleasantries with a few former classmates who clearly didn't know what to say to her. "Oh, Sarah, you look healthy," one girl, who used to be her lab partner, said with a pitying smile. "Are you still, doing the art thing?" "I am," Sarah said politely. "I'm actually designing interior textiles now." "Oh, cute," the girl chirped. "Like on Etsy. My cousin does that. She makes macrame pot holders. Good for you for staying busy." Sarah didn't correct her. She didn't mention that her textiles were currently draping the windows of the presidential suite at the Four Seasons in Kyoto. She just smiled and nodded. Well, well, well. The voice was like fingernails on a chalkboard. The conversation circle parted like the Red Sea, and there was Brad. He walked over with a swagger that suggested he owned the building. Tiffany was glued to his side, looking at Sarah like she was a bug that needed to be squashed. "I didn't think you'd actually show up," Brad said, his voice loud enough to attract the attention of the nearby tables. He looked her up and down, his eyes lingering on her simple dress with a sneer. "Brave." "Hello, Brad," Sarah said, her voice steady, though her heart was hammering against her ribs. "Tiffany, nice to see you." "Is it?" Brad laughed, a sharp, barking sound. "God, Sarah, look at you. You look tired. Life out in the sticks wearing you down?" "I'm actually very happy, Brad. I live in the Hudson Valley now." "Hudson Valley?" Brad turned to the group of people that had gathered around them, eager for the drama. "You hear that? She's a farmer now. Did you drive your tractor here, Sarah? I saw you walking in from down the street. Couldn't afford the valet." A few people chuckled nervously. Jessica Thorne, sipping her martini, leaned in closer. I prefer the walk, Sarah said. Right. You prefer the walk, just like you preferred a smaller apartment when we were married, right? Brad took a sip of his scotch. Let's be honest, Sarah. You were always afraid of the big leagues. That's why it didn't work out. You wanted the simple life. I wanted... He gestured grandly around the room. Greatness. Greatness, Sarah repeated, her tone dry. Is that what you call it? Brad's eyes narrowed. He stepped closer, invading her personal space. The smell of expensive scotch and cologne was overpowering. Don't get bitter, sweetie. It's not a good look on you. Look, I'm not a monster. I know the settlement wasn't huge. If you need a handout, just ask. Seriously, I just got promoted to senior VP. We're closing a deal with TechNexo next week, worth $300 million. I can write you a check. Call it charity. Tiffany giggled, covering her mouth with a perfectly manicured hand. Babe, don't be mean. She's trying her best. Look at her dress. It's vintage, right? Like thrift store vintage. The crowd was silent now. This was a public execution. Brad was dismantling her, piece by piece, using his wealth as a bludgeon. Sarah felt the heat rising in her cheeks. It wasn't shame, it was anger. Pure, molten anger. She thought about the bank account balance on her phone. She thought about the contract she had signed yesterday with the Dubai royal family for a design consultation. She could buy Brad's entire firm and turn it into a parking lot. But she remembered Liam's words. Underestimation is a weapon. I don't need your money, Brad, Sarah said quietly. Everyone needs money, Sarah, Brad bellowed, throwing his arms up. That's how the world works. But you wouldn't know that, would you? You're still living in a fantasy world where painting pretty pictures pays the bills. Look around. These are movers and shakers. We are the 1%. You are, well, you're the past. He turned his back to her, dismissing her, and addressed the group. Drinks are on me, everyone. Let's toast to success, and to dodging bullets. He raised his glass towards Sarah, winking. The room erupted in laughter. It was cruel. High school pack mentality resurfacing in 30-year-old bodies. Sarah stood there, frozen. She wanted to run. She wanted to scream. She checked her watch. 8:15 p.m. Liam was late. Excuse me, she muttered, pushing past a smirking Tiffany to get to the balcony. She needed air. Outside, the New York City night was crisp. She gripped the stone railing, her knuckles white. Below, the city traffic hummed. Don't let him get to you, a voice said. Sarah turned. It was Michael Ross, the senator's aide. He looked apologetic. He's a jerk, Sarah. Always was. But, you know, he's powerful now. He's got pull with the zoning board, and half the guys in there are trying to get him to invest in their startups. People suck up to money. I know, Michael, Sarah said, wiping a stray tear from her eye. It's just the arrogance. He thinks he built it all himself. Did he? Michael asked. No, Sarah whispered. I managed his portfolio for the first 5 years. I found the Amazon entry point. I told him to short the housing market in 2008. He took the credit. I did the math. When I left, he had the capital. I had the knowledge. Michael looked at her with new respect. Why didn't you say anything? Because he has the lawyers, Michael. And I was tired. Suddenly, the glass doors to the balcony burst open. It was Brad again, followed by his entourage. He clearly wasn't done playing with his food. There she is, Brad slurred slightly. The runaway bride. Come on inside, Sarah. We're doing a slideshow of the good old days, and I think there's a picture of you with that terrible haircut from junior year. You can't miss it. I'm leaving, Brad, Sarah said, picking up her clutch. Leaving? Brad blocked the doorway. You can't leave. The night is young. Besides, I wanted to introduce you to my partners. They need a new receptionist. I figured, since you're already familiar with my schedule." Tiffany laughed so hard she spilled her champagne. "Oh my God, Brad, you are terrible." "I'm just trying to help the unemployed." Brad grinned. At that moment, a low rumble vibrated through the floorboards. It wasn't the subway. It was a commotion coming from the main entrance of the ballroom, visible through the glass doors. The music stopped. The chatter died down. Through the glass, Sarah saw the head of security for the plaza, a man who usually stood stone-faced at the entrance, rushing across the room, speaking frantically into his earpiece. Waiters were scrambling to clear a path. "What's going on?" Tiffany asked, looking annoyed that the attention had shifted. Brad frowned, peering through the glass. "Probably a celebrity. Or maybe the mayor. I told the mayor's office I'd be here. He probably stopped by to shake my hand." Brad adjusted his tie, a smug grin returning. "Stay here, Sarah. You might learn how to network." Brad pushed the doors open and strode back into the ballroom, ready to greet his guest. Sarah followed slowly, curiosity winning over her desire to flee. The double doors at the far end of the ballroom swung open. But it wasn't the mayor. 6 men in black suits entered first. They weren't hotel security. They were private, close protection officers. They moved with military precision, scanning the room, checking the exits. The atmosphere in the room shifted from cocktail party to high alert intensity. Then, a man entered. He wore a tuxedo that fit him so perfectly it looked like a second skin. It was midnight blue with a black satin lapel. He didn't walk. He glided. He had an aura of power that made Brad's swagger look like a toddler stumbling in Dad's shoes. It was Liam. But it wasn't the Liam she saw making pancakes on Sunday mornings. This was Liam Sterling. The Liam Sterling, owner of Sterling Heavy Industries, majority shareholder of the bank that held the mortgage on half the buildings in Manhattan, a man whose net worth was discussed in whispers because the number was too high to comprehend. The room went dead silent. Even the ice melting in the buckets seemed too loud. Brad froze. His mouth hung open. He recognized Liam Sterling. Everyone did. He was the white whale of the financial world, the man every hedge fund manager dreamed of meeting, but never could get an appointment with. Brad frantically smoothed his hair. "Oh my God," he whispered to Tiffany. "That's Liam Sterling. He's here. He must be here for me. The Technexo deal. He must have heard about it." Brad stepped forward, his chest puffed out, preparing his handshake. "Mr. Sterling," Brad called out, his voice cracking slightly. "Brad Miller, Senior VP at Oakmont Capital. What an honor. Did you receive my email about the—" Liam didn't even blink. He didn't break stride. He looked right through Brad as if he were made of glass. He walked past the stunned senator's aide. He walked past the trembling class president. He walked straight through the center of the dance floor, his eyes locked on one thing. The crowd turned, following his gaze. They looked to the back of the room, to the balcony doors. Liam stopped in front of Sarah. The silence was deafening. Brad stood there, his hand still extended in the air, looking confused and foolish. Liam looked at Sarah, taking in her pale face and the unshed tears in her eyes. His expression darkened. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "I'm sorry I'm late, mi amor," Liam said, his voice deep and carrying to every corner of the silent room. "The Prime Minister of Japan kept me on the phone longer than expected." He reached out and gently took Sarah's hand, bringing it to his lips. "Are you ready to go?" "Or—" Liam turned his head slowly, his cold grey eyes finally landing on Brad, who was currently turning a sickly shade of green. "Oh, his todes!" Is there something we need to discuss with these people? The silence in the grand ballroom of the plaza was heavier than the crystal chandeliers hanging overhead. It wasn't just quiet. It was a vacuum. 300 people were holding their breath simultaneously. Brad Miller was the first to break it, though it wasn't with grace. It was with a sputter. Wait, hold on, Brad stammered, stepping forward again, ignoring the wall of security guards that had subtly shifted to block his path. He pointed a shaking finger at Sarah. You know her? Mr. Sterling, I think there's been a mistake. This is Sarah, my ex-wife. She's nobody. She's a failed artist living in a barn upstate. Liam didn't look at Brad. He kept his eyes locked on Sarah, his thumb gently stroking the back of her hand. A barn? Liam mused, a small, cold smile playing on his lips. I suppose the estate does have a barn, though I believe we just converted it into a studio for your sculpture work, didn't we, darling? The one Architectural Digest is featuring next month? A collective gasp rippled through the room. Jessica Thorne nearly dropped her martini. Brad's face flushed a deep, ugly shade of crimson. Sculpture? Please. She's playing you, Mr. Sterling. That's what she does. She leeches off success. She couldn't handle the pressure of my career, so she ran away. If she's with you, it's only for the money. She's a gold digger. Liam finally turned. The movement was slow, deliberate, and terrifying. He released Sarah's hand and took one step toward Brad. The air pressure in the room seemed to shift. Liam Sterling was known in the business world as the silencer for a reason. He didn't scream. He eviscerated. Mr. Miller, was it? Liam asked, his voice low and smooth, like velvet dragged over gravel. Yes, Brad Miller, Senior VP at Oakmont Capital, Brad said, straightening his tie, thinking he finally had an opening. I handle the high-risk portfolio. I didn't ask for your resume. Liam cut him off. I asked to confirm your name so I know whose career I'm about to dismantle. Brad blinked. Excuse me. You called my wife a gold digger, Liam said, his voice rising just enough to carry to the back of the room. Let me clarify something for you, and for everyone else in this room who seems confused. Sarah didn't chase me. I spent 2 years trying to convince her to go to dinner with me. I had to buy an art gallery in London just to get an introduction, because she wouldn't return my calls. She didn't want my money. She has her own. In fact, when we merged our assets prior to the marriage, her design firm, Ether Aesthetics, was valued at $40 million, debt-free. Liam paused, letting the number hang in the air. Tiffany, standing behind Brad, looked as if she had been slapped. She looked at Sarah's simple black dress and realized with dawning horror that the lack of logos wasn't poverty, it was the kind of wealth that didn't need to shout. 40 million? Brad whispered. She refused to take a dime of my money, Liam continued, stepping closer to Brad until he was looming over him. She pays for the renovations on our barn. She pays for her own cars. The only thing she let me buy her. Liam reached out and touched the small pearl earrings Sarah was wearing. Worthies. And she only wears them to make me happy. Liam's eyes hardened into steel, So, Mr. Miller, when you say she couldn't handle your success, I have to wonder, what success are you referring to? Because from where I'm standing, you're a mid-level manager at a third-tier firm, wearing a suit that fits poorly, trying to bully a woman who has generated more equity in the last quarter than you will in your entire life. Brad opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He looked around the room for support, but his friends were avoiding his gaze. The pack had turned. The alpha had been dethroned, and a new apex predator was in the room. But Brad was a narcissist, and narcissists don't go down without a fight. His brain scrambled for a way to regain control, a way to leverage the situation. "Okay," Brad said, a nervous, sweaty smile plastering onto his face. "Okay, so she's done well. Good for her. But business is business, right, Mr. Sterling? We're men of the world. Personal feelings aside, Oakmont Capital is closing the Technexo deal on Tuesday. It's a game changer. $300 million. If you're looking for a partner with real grit..." Sarah watched Brad, feeling a strange mixture of pity and revulsion. He really didn't get it. He was standing on the train tracks, trying to sell insurance to the oncoming locomotive. Liam laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "The Technexo deal," Liam repeated. He reached into his tuxedo jacket and pulled out a sleek, black smartphone. "It's funny you mention that." Liam tapped the screen of his phone twice and held it up. "Is your boss, Marcus Gentry, the CEO of Oakmont?" Brad nodded eagerly. "Yes, Marcus and I are like this," he said, crossing his fingers. "I'm his right-hand man." "Excellent," Liam said. "Let's give Marcus a call. I believe he's currently in London, but he'll answer for me." Liam pressed a button and put the phone on speaker. The room was so silent you could hear the ringing tone echo off the walls. 1 ring. 2 rings. "Liam?" A panicked voice crackled through the speaker. "Is everything all right? It's 2 a.m. here. Did the transfer fail?" "The transfer is pending, Marcus," Liam said, his eyes bored into Brad's. "I'm currently at a high school reunion at the plaza. I've run into one of your employees, a Mr. Brad Miller." Brad puffed up his chest, mouthing, "That's me," to Tiffany. "Brad?" Marcus's voice sounded confused. "The junior VP. Why? Is he bothering you? I can have him removed." "Junior VP?" Liam asked, raising an eyebrow at Brad. "He told me he was senior VP, and his right-hand man." "He's a glorified salesman, Liam," Marcus said quickly, sounding desperate to please. "Look, if he's causing trouble, I apologize. He's aggressive. Not very bright, but aggressive. Why are you calling about him?" "He mentioned the Technexo acquisition," Liam said calmly. "He seems to think it's closing on Tuesday." Yes, we're very excited," Marcus said. "It's going to put Oakmont on the map." "It's not closing, Marcus," Liam said. There was a pause on the line. "What? Why?" "We have the capital." "Because," Liam said, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly casual tone, "I bought the controlling interest in Technexo this morning through a shell corporation. I own it. And I have a strict policy. I don't do business with firms that employ men who publicly humiliate my wife." The line went dead silent. Brad's face drained of all color. He looked like a wax figure melting under a heat lamp. "Your wife?" Marcus choked out. "Sarah Miller, or rather, Sarah Sterling, Brad's ex-wife. He spent the last hour abusing her in front of 300 witnesses. He claims Oakmont supports this kind of behavior." "No!" Marcus screamed through the phone. "No, absolutely not. Liam, please, don't kill the deal. We've leveraged everything on this. If Technexo falls through, Oakmont goes under. We'll be insolvent by Friday." "That sounds like a you problem, Marcus," Liam said. "You have 30 seconds to convince me not to liquidate Technexo's assets and bankrupt your firm." "Brad!" Marcus's voice roared through the tiny speaker, distorted by rage. "Put him on! Is he there?" Liam extended the phone toward Brad. Brad's hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the device. "Hey, hello? Marcus?" Brad squeaked. "You idiot!" Marcus shrieked. "You absolute moron! Do you have any idea what you've done? You're fired! You hear me? You're done! Get out of there! And if Sterling pulls this deal, I will sue you for every penny you've ever made. I will bury you, Brad." Liam gently took the phone back from Brad's trembling fingers. "I think he got the message, Marcus. I'll have my lawyers call you in the morning. Depending on how the rest of my evening goes, we'll see if you still have a company." Liam hung up. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't shocked anymore. It was terrified. Brad Miller, the golden boy, the man who had strutted in like a peacock, was now unemployed, likely blacklisted from the entire finance industry, and facing a lawsuit from his own firm. Brad swayed. He looked at Tiffany. "Tiff, baby, we need to go. We need to figure this out." Tiffany took a step back. The look of adoration she had worn all night had vanished, replaced by cold calculation. She looked at Brad, sweaty, fired, ruined, and then she looked at Liam Sterling. "I think I'll stay," Tiffany said icily. "I drove separately. And honestly, Brad, you're making a scene. It's embarrassing." The knife twist, the betrayal. Brad looked at her, stunned. But I left her for you." "And that?" Tiffany shrugged, smoothing her sequined dress. "Was obviously a bad investment." The destruction of Brad Miller was complete, but Sarah didn't feel the rush of joy she expected. She felt a profound sense of closure. The monster under her bed had been revealed to be nothing more than a small, frightened man in a leased suit. She stepped forward. She didn't need Liam to speak for her anymore. She walked up to Brad. He flinched, expecting her to slap him or scream. Instead, Sarah reached into her clutch, the one she had designed, the one made of Italian leather and hand-stitched silk, and pulled out a small, rectangular card. "Brad," she said softly. He looked up, his eyes rimmed with red. He looked broken. "You were right about one thing," Sarah said. Her voice was steady, clear, and projected effortlessly to the crowd that was hanging on her every word. "I did want a simple life, but simple doesn't mean small. I wanted a life without lies, without debt, without the constant need to prove I'm better than everyone else." She pressed the card into his hand. "This is the number for a crisis management firm in the city. The owner is a friend of mine. She helps high-profile executives who have fallen from grace. Tell her Sarah Sterling sent you. She might give you a discount." Brad looked at the card, his hand trembling. It was an act of grace he didn't deserve, and that made it burn worse than any insult. Sarah turned away from him and looked at the crowd. She saw the faces of the people who had laughed at her 10 minutes ago. The lab partner who mocked her Etsy shop. The senator's aide who had pitied her. She walked over to the girl who had made the comment about macrame potholders. The girl looked like she wanted to melt into the floor. "It was nice seeing you, Jessica," Sarah said with a genuine smile. "And just so you know, my textiles aren't on Etsy. But if you're ever in Kyoto, check into the presidential suite at the Four Seasons. I did the drapery and the upholstery. I think you'd like the thread count." She turned to Michael, the senator's aide. "Michael, call my office on Monday. I know your senator is looking for donors for the environmental initiative. The Sterling Foundation might be interested." Michael's jaw dropped. Yes, Sarah. Thank you." Sarah felt a hand on her waist. Liam was there, his presence warm and grounding. "Are you ready to go, Mrs. Sterling?" he asked. "I believe we have a reservation at Le Bernardin, and I'd hate to keep the chef waiting." "I'm ready," Sarah said. They turned to leave. As they walked toward the exit, the crowd parted instantly, creating a wide avenue for them. No one spoke. No one dared to raise a glass. As they reached the double doors, Sarah stopped. She looked back one last time. Brad was standing alone in the center of the dance floor. Tiffany had already moved on to the open bar and was chatting up a divorce lawyer from the class of 2013. The bubble of Brad's life had popped, and the reunion was continuing around him as if he were a ghost. Sarah felt a squeeze on her hand. "Don't look back," Liam whispered. "You're not going that way." "I know," Sarah smiled, turning her back on the ballroom, on Brad, and on the ghost of the girl she used to be. "Let's go home." The doors swung open. The cool night air hit her face. A black Rolls-Royce Phantom was idling at the curb, the driver holding the door open. But just as Sarah was about to step into the car, a voice called out from the darkness of the street. "Sarah, wait!" She froze. It wasn't Brad. It was a woman's voice, high-pitched, breathless. Sarah turned around. Running toward them from the shadows of the hotel entrance was a woman in a disheveled coat, her mascara running. It was Tiffany. "Sarah, please!" Tiffany panted, stopping a few feet away from the imposing figure of the bodyguard. I need to talk to you. Just for a second." Liam stepped in front of Sarah, his expression bored. "I think you've said enough tonight, haven't you?" "No, please, Mr. Sterling," Tiffany begged, her eyes darting between them. "It's not about Brad. It's about what Brad did. There's something Sarah doesn't know. Something he did before the divorce. If you leave now, he gets away with it. Real legal trouble, not just losing a job." Sarah stepped out from behind Liam. "What are you talking about, Tiffany?" Tiffany looked over her shoulder, checking if Brad had followed her out. She lowered her voice to a whisper. "The embezzlement," Tiffany said. "You thought he just stole from your savings account?" "Sarah, he stole from the client accounts, and he used your old passwords to do it. He framed you. If the SEC looks into him because of what happened tonight, they're going to find your digital fingerprints on the stolen $3 million. The blood in Sarah's veins turned to ice. Liam's face went deadly still. "What did you say?" "He set her up," Tiffany said, tears streaming down her face. "He told me about it when he was drunk. He said if you ever tried to come after him, he'd trigger the audit and you'd go to prison for fraud. He has the documents on a hard drive in his safe." Sarah grabbed Liam's arm to steady herself. Brad hadn't just been a bad husband. He had planted a bomb in her life, waiting for the right moment to detonate it. Even in his defeat, he had a dead man's switch. Liam looked at Tiffany, assessing her truthfulness. Then he looked at Sarah. The tenderness in his eyes was gone, replaced by the cold calculation of a general at war. "Where is the safe?" Liam asked. "In his apartment," Tiffany said. "The penthouse on 5th, but you can't get in. It's biometric." Liam checked his watch. He pulled out his phone again, but this time he didn't call a CEO. He dialed a number that didn't have a name saved in the contacts. "Change of plans?" Liam said into the phone. "Cancel dinner. I need the security team at the Oakmont Residential Tower on 5th Avenue in 10 minutes, and get me the best forensic accountant in the city. Tonight." He hung up and looked at Sarah. "We aren't going home just yet," Liam said, his voice grim. "We're going to finish this. Permanently." The interior of the Rolls-Royce Phantom was silent, save for the soft hum of the engine and Tiffany's jagged breathing. She sat on the jump seat, facing Sarah and Liam, picking at a loose sequin on her dress. "I didn't know," Tiffany whispered, breaking the silence. "I mean, I knew he was shady. I knew he cut corners. But I didn't know he set you up to take the fall. I swear." Sarah looked out the window as the city lights blurred past. "It doesn't matter what you knew, Tiffany. It matters what you're doing now." "If he goes down for this," Tiffany said, her voice trembling. "I don't want to be listed as an accomplice. I want immunity. Can you promise me that?" Liam looked up from his phone, his face illuminated by the blue light of the screen. "If the drive proves what you say it does, my lawyers will ensure you're treated as a whistleblower. But if you're wasting my time, Tiffany, you'll wish you had stayed at the party." The car screeched to a halt in front of the Oakmont Towers on Fifth Avenue. It was a gaudy building, all glass and gold trim, exactly Brad's style. Liam's security detail was already there. 2 black SUVs were idling at the curb. A man with a thick neck and an earpiece opened the Rolls-Royce door. "Mr. Sterling," the head of security said, "we've secured the service elevator. The doorman has been incentivized to take a coffee break." "Good," Liam said, buttoning his jacket. "Let's move." They moved as a phalanx, Liam, Sarah, Tiffany, and 4 large men, sweeping into the lobby and bypassing the front desk. They rode the elevator to the 45th floor in silence. The numbers ticked up slowly. 30, 35, 40. Ding. The doors opened directly into the penthouse foyer. It was a monument to bad taste. A giant self-portrait of Brad hung in the hallway. The furniture was white leather, and the carpet was a deep, aggressive red. "Where is it?" Liam asked. "Master bedroom," Tiffany said, kicking off her heels so she could run. "Behind the painting of the bull. It's a cliché, I know." They rushed into the bedroom. Sure enough, a painting of a charging bull hung over the bed. Tiffany pulled it aside, revealing a heavy steel safe embedded in the wall. "He changed the code last week," Tiffany said, her fingers hovering over the keypad. "But he's lazy. He usually uses his fantasy football score or—" Wait, she paused. "Try 00000000." Liam signaled to his security specialist, a man named Kane, to try it. Kane punched in the zeros. The light blinked red. "Wrong," Kane said. "Damn it," Tiffany cursed. "Okay, try his birthday. 04122805. Kane tried it. Red light. "One more try, and it locks down for 24 hours, Kane warned. "And if it's a smart safe, it might send an alert to his phone." Sarah stepped forward. She stared at the keypad. She thought about the man Brad was. The narcissism, the obsession with winning, the way he held on to grudges. "Try 101511, Sarah said softly. Liam looked at her. "What is that?" "It's the date we got divorced," Sarah said. "October 15th, 2011. He considers it the day he got his freedom. It's the most important day of his life." Kane hesitated, then keyed in the numbers. Beep. A green light flashed. The heavy door clicked and swung open. Sarah let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Even in his security measures, Brad's ego was his undoing. Inside the safe sat a stack of cash, a passport, and a single black external hard drive labeled Contingency. Kane grabbed the drive and immediately plugged it into a ruggedized laptop he had brought. "I'm cloning it now," he said, his fingers flying across the keyboard, checking the file structure. Jesus, it's all here. Chat logs, bank transfers, the IP spoofing software he used to route the transactions through Sarah's old laptop. It's a smoking gun. "Secure it," Liam commanded. Suddenly, the elevator chime echoed through the apartment. Everyone froze. "He's here," Tiffany gasped, backing away toward the window. "He must have taken a cab." "Keep copying," Liam told Kane. He turned to the bedroom door, standing in front of Sarah. "Let him come." Brad Miller stormed into the apartment, his tie undone, his face a mask of drunken rage. He was shouting before he even saw them. "Tiffany, where are you? Pack your bags, we need to—" He stopped dead in the doorway of the bedroom. He saw the open safe. He saw Kane with the laptop. He saw Tiffany cowering in the corner. And he saw Liam and Sarah. Brad's face went from red to a ghostly white. He looked at the empty spot in the safe where the hard drive had been. "You," Brad sputtered, pointing a shaking finger. "You can't be here. This is breaking and entering. I'll call the police." "Please do," Liam said calmly. "I'm sure the FBI would love to save the trip. We have the drive, Brad. We have the logs where you impersonated Sarah. We have the transfers to the offshore accounts in the Caymans." Brad lunged. It was a desperate, pathetic move. He threw himself toward Kane, trying to grab the laptop. He didn't make it 2 steps. One of Liam's security guards stepped forward and simply extended an arm. Brad ran into it like a bird hitting a window pane. He collapsed onto the white carpet, gasping for air. "It's over, Brad," Sarah said. She looked down at him, but she didn't feel fear anymore. She felt nothing. He was just a sad, small man on the floor. Brad rolled over, looking up at her with venom in his eyes. "You think you won? You think this billionaire is going to save you? He'll get bored of you, Sarah. Just like I did. You're boring. You're nothing." Liam stepped forward, his polished shoe stopping inches from Brad's face. "She is everything you could never understand," Liam said, his voice cold and final. "She is dignity. She is resilience. And unlike you, she doesn't need to steal to have worth." Liam turned to the guard. "Hold him here until the authorities arrive. I've already sent the data to the district attorney." He offered his arm to Sarah. "Shall we go, my love? The air in here is stale." Sarah took his arm. She didn't look back at Brad, who was now sobbing into the carpet, muttering about how it wasn't fair. They walked past the painting of the bull, past the bad art, and into the elevator. As the doors closed, shutting out the sight of her past life forever, Sarah finally smiled. It wasn't a smile for an audience. It was for herself. 3 months later, the morning sun over the Hudson Valley didn't just rise. It seemed to paint the world in strokes of gold and amber. Inside the renovated barn, now a sprawling, light-filled sanctuary of glass, reclaimed timber, and polished concrete, the silence was a physical weight. But it was a comfortable one. It was the silence of peace, not emptiness. Sarah stood before her expansive drafting table in the center of her studio. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered an unobstructed view of the paddock, where 2 Hanoverian horses were grazing in the mist. She adjusted the angle of her lamp, her eyes scanning the blueprints for the new library wing of the Sterling Foundation. It was her most ambitious project yet, a space designed not just to house books, but to inspire the kind of quiet confidence she had fought so hard to regain. The smell of freshly ground Colombian coffee drifted in from the kitchen, mixing with the scent of lavender from the garden. For a moment, Sarah closed her eyes, breathing it in. It was a far cry from the stale air of the small apartment she had shared with Brad, where the scent of his stress and ambition had always seemed to choke out the oxygen. "Sarah," Liam's voice floated from the open-plan living area, breaking her reverie. It wasn't urgent, but there was a specific gravity to it that made her look up. "You might want to see this. The news is on." Sarah set down her pencil. She walked barefoot across the heated concrete floors, the hem of her oversized cashmere cardigan trailing behind her. Liam was leaning against the quartz island in the kitchen, holding 2 steaming ceramic mugs. He wasn't looking at her. His gaze was fixed on the large, flat-screen television mounted above the stone fireplace. Sarah moved to his side, taking the mug he offered. She looked at the screen. The banner at the bottom read, "Breaking news. Oakmont Capital Executive sentenced." On the screen, a reporter stood outside the federal courthouse in Manhattan, clutching a microphone against the blustery city wind. In a stunning and rapid conclusion to the financial scandal that rocked Wall Street earlier this fall, former Senior Vice President Bradley Miller was sentenced this morning. The judge showed little leniency, citing the predatory nature of the fraud. The footage cut to a clip recorded minutes earlier. The heavy oak doors of the courthouse swung open, and a phalanx of marshals emerged. In the center of them, shackled at the wrists and ankles, was Brad. He looked unrecognizable. The bespoke suits were gone, replaced by a generic, ill-fitting orange jumpsuit that washed out his complexion. His hair, usually gelled to perfection, was thinning and unkempt. But it was his eyes that struck Sarah the most. They were hollow. The arrogance, the spark of superiority that had defined him for a decade. It was extinguished. He didn't look at the cameras. He stared at the pavement as he was shuffled toward the waiting transport van. Miller was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for wire fraud, grand larceny, and aggravated identity theft, the reporter continued. Prosecutors noted that the swift conviction was made possible by a mountain of digital evidence provided by a cooperating witness, believed to be a former associate of Miller's. Tiffany. Sarah took a sip of her coffee. The bitterness of the dark roast felt grounding. Tiffany had saved her own skin, certainly, but she had also driven the final nail into Brad's coffin. 15 years, Sarah murmured, the words feeling strange on her tongue. He always wanted to be famous, Liam. He used to talk about seeing his name in the papers. I guess he finally got his wish. Liam watched the van drive away on the screen, then picked up the remote and clicked the television off. The room returned to its serene quiet. "The system works occasionally," Liam said, his voice low. He turned to her, his grey eyes softening as they left the screen and found her face. "But he is the past, Sarah. He's a memory, and memories can't hurt us here. Look at what arrived in the Morning Post." He reached onto the counter and slid a glossy magazine toward her. It was the latest issue of Architectural Digest. Sarah felt a flutter of nervous excitement in her stomach. She looked down. There, on the cover, was her home. Their home. The photo captured the main living space at twilight, the warm glow of the interior contrasting with the blue dusk outside. It looked inviting, sophisticated, and undeniably real. The headline was bold and elegant, simple elegance, how Sarah Sterling is redefining American luxury. She ran her hand over the glossy paper. It wasn't just a photo of a house. It was validation. It was proof that her simple taste, the very thing Brad had mocked as small and unambitious, was actually world-class. "It looks really good," she whispered. "I was worried the lighting in the foyer was too moody, but they captured it perfectly." "It's a masterpiece, Sarah," Liam said, stepping closer and kissing her forehead. "Just like the artist who designed it. You did this. Not me. Not my money. You." Sarah smiled, leaning into him. "We did it." "Actually," Liam said, pulling back slightly with a mischievous glint in his eye. "There is one more thing. A letter came for you. It's from St. Jude's Preparatory." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "You're joking. Another reunion invite? Didn't we cause enough damage at the last one?" "Not an invite," Liam corrected, handing her a thick, cream-colored envelope with the school's crest embossed in gold. An apology and a notification. Sarah opened the envelope. Inside was a letter on heavy stationery, signed by the head of the Alumni Association, the same woman who had barely looked at her during the reunion. "Dear Mrs. Sterling," the letter began. "In light of your extraordinary contributions to the arts and your recent philanthropic gestures," Sarah scanned the text. "They wanted to honor her. They wanted to present her with the Distinguished Alumnus Award at the Spring Gala. They gushed about the scholarship fund she had established for underprivileged arts students, a fund she had ironically named the Bradley Miller Second Chance Grant, funded entirely by the liquidation of Brad's assets. "They want to give me an award," Sarah said, a dry laugh escaping her lips. "They ignored me for 10 years, and now that I'm on the cover of a magazine and married to a billionaire, suddenly I'm distinguished." "It's the way of the world," Liam said with a shrug. "But the question is, do you want to go? We could take the helicopter. Make an entrance." Sarah looked at the letter, then at the magazine, and finally out the window at the rolling hills of their estate. She thought about the ballroom at the plaza. She thought about the desperate need for validation she had felt walking into that room 3 months ago. She felt none of it now. "I think I'm busy that weekend," Sarah said, tossing the letter carelessly onto the counter next to the coffee pot. "I have a date with my husband." "Oh?" Liam smiled, wrapping his arms around her waist. "And what are we doing on this date?" "Living well," Sarah said, looking up at him with clear, bright eyes. "It really is the best revenge, isn't it? I don't need their applause, Liam. I have everything I need right here." They stood there for a long moment, swaying slightly in the morning light, the ghost of Brad Miller fading into total obscurity. Sarah realized she didn't feel triumph over Brad's prison sentence. She didn't feel glee. She simply felt free. "Come on," Liam said, gently pulling her toward the sliding glass doors. "The horses are waiting, and I think I saw you eyeing that new John Deere tractor yesterday. I bet you want to take it for a spin." "I do love a good tractor," Sarah grinned, the heaviness of the morning dissolving instantly. "You know, Brad used to make fun of me for that." "Brad was a fool," Liam said, opening the door to the crisp autumn air. "And he never saw you drive." Hand in hand, they walked out into the golden morning, leaving the magazine, the letter, and the past on the counter behind them. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you handle a bully. Brad thought his money made him a king, but he forgot that a king without character is just a man in a costume. Sarah didn't just survive, she thrived, not by playing his game, but by building her own. If this story satisfied that itch for justice, if you loved watching the arrogant crash and the humble rise, then do me a favor. Smash that like button until it turns blue. It helps the channel more than you know. And if you want more stories where karma comes collecting, hit subscribe and ring the notification bell. You don't want to miss next week's story. Mother-in-law wears white to the wedding, so the bride plays a video that silences the entire church. Trust me, you're going to want to see that one. Thanks for watching, and remember, the best revenge isn't getting even. It's living so well you forget they even exist. See you next time.